Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're putting on our geoarchaeologist hats and digging deep into the rich, complex sediment of ancient Cyprus, or as it was known back then, Alachia. We're going to trace an incredible journey, looking at how this island transformed from a place of remote, survival-focused Stone Age shelters into a booming, high-contrast Bronze Age metropolis. We're talking about bustling trade ports where Mycenaean ships unloaded massive hauls of pottery and weapons, and ancient Hittite officials inspected local goods. Let's get excavating. Here is our excavation plan for today. We'll look at the first inhabitants and the megafauna extinction, the game-changing discovery of copper in the Troodos Mountains, the massive Eastern Mediterranean trade networks, the big debate around the Mycenaeans, was it an invasion or a hybridization? And finally, Bronze Age urbanism and those massive Cyclopean walls. All right, starting with part 1. First inhabitants and megafauna extinction. We begin our journey at the absolute deepest layer of human occupation on the island. If we simulate the timeline of sediment deposition here, it's like watching a time-lapse. We start with bare bedrock and sterile earth. Then, around 11,000 BC, the first hunter-gatherers arrive. As we move up the strata, we literally see the extinction of the island's endemic megafauna, specifically pygmy hippos and dwarf elephants, hunted out of existence. Finally, we hit the early Bronze Age, marked by the arrival of Anatolian migrants who brought some serious metallurgical skills with them. And the contrast between these historical layers is just mind-blowing. On the one hand, you have these remote Epipaleolithic coastal shelters, totally isolated, purely focused on survival. But fast forward, and you have these late Bronze Age ports. Picture this cinematic, photorealistic scene, bustling, cosmopolitan hubs enclosed by giant stone walls. You have Aegean settlers interacting with local Anatolian-influenced cultures. Ships are constantly docking, and the marketplace is just alive with people speaking early Greek dialects and Luvian. It's a completely different world. Moving right along to part 2, Troodos Mountains, discovery of copper. This is where we hit the geological layer that changed the course of history forever. What's really fascinating about the spatial geography here is the distance. You can see that major coastal trade hubs like Enklimi and Kishin were located a good 35 to 40 kilometers away from the actual copper ore bodies, which were hidden deep within the Troodos Mountains. Bridging that gap required massive logistical organization for the time. So what was the secret sauce? Pelolavas. This is a unique geological formation surrounding the Troodos Mountains, containing incredibly high-grade copper sulfide ores. When you combined this red gold with the massive amounts of charcoal coming from local forests, you got the absolute metallurgical engine of the Bronze Age. Which brings us perfectly to part 3, Eastern Mediterranean trade networks. As we dig into these late Bronze Age layers, the sheer scale of international trade is absolutely staggering. Looking at this timeline from 1650 to 1125 BCE, this is the exact window when Alachia emerged as an indispensable geopolitical engine. It was basically the economic glue balancing the superpowers of the era, the Mycenaeans, the Hittites, and the Egyptians. And they weren't just exporting raw, locally refined copper ingots either. We're talking distinctive white slip and red polished pottery, perfumes, olive oil, wine, and abundant timber. These coastal ports essentially became global transshipment points, turning the island into the ultimate economic middleman. Now, here's a really cool detail. Rather than having one single supreme ruler hoarding all this wealth, the island operated as a highly complex network. You had interconnected coastal centers, inland farming hubs, and mining villages, all coordinating the flow of goods together. Just look at this 14th century BCE silver bowl from Enkomi. The intricate animal motifs on this thing perfectly illustrate the immense wealth and artistic hybridity that flowed into Cypriot high society. You can literally see the fusion of different cultural aesthetics right there in the metalwork. That leads us right into part 4, Mycenaeans, invasion or hybridization. Now we are reaching a highly contested layer in our archaeological dig. As impartial geoarchaeologists, we have to look at both sides of the debate. For a long time, the dominant narrative was a crude us versus them story of colonization, violent invasion and dominance by the Mycenaeans. But the modern hybridization perspective suggests something much more dynamic, a vibrant amalgamation of Aegean, Cypriot, and Levantine cultures, creating an entirely new identity. Let's look at the physical evidence. Yes, we absolutely see a flood of Mycenaean pottery, like stirrup jars and craters in Cypriot tombs. But, and this is crucial,
There's no widespread administrative displacement. They kept right on using the local Cypro-Minoan script and sealing practices. We also see new mortuary traditions that seamlessly blend foreign and indigenous elements together. As this quote brilliant puts it, these newcomers were neither colonists nor conquerors. Alongside indigenous Cypriots, they established new social identities through cultural encounters and mixings. It wasn't about subjugation, it was a profound social fusion. And finally, Part 5, Bronze Age Urbanism, Cyclopean Walls. Let's look at the actual physical architecture that defined these hybridized cosmopolitan hubs.
Cyclopean walls are these massive fortification systems built out of unworked metric ton boulders. It's a megalithic architectural style that actually shows both Aegean and Anatolian, specifically Hittite, influences. It really highlights how turbulent and defensive, yet totally globally connected the Late Bronze Age was.
2.5. That is the number of hectares enclosed by the massive Cyclopean wall at Enkomi alone. For the Bronze Age, that is a staggering amount of space for a bustling metallurgical capital. When you break down the urban planning here, it's really a masterclass in early engineering. You have gridiron street plans inspired by Syria and Agarit, great official buildings with ashlar masonry showing Levantine and local influences, those massive Aegean and Anatolian-style fortifications, and specialized indigenous industrial zones for copper smelting. It's the ultimate architectural melting pot.
Looking at this chronological schema, it's amazing to see how Cyprus managed to seamlessly transition right out of the Late Bronze Age into the Iron Age. While other civilizations around the Mediterranean completely collapsed, their robust copper economy and highly hybridized culture forged a super resilient new identity. So, as we dust off our trowels and wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought. Does geographic luck, like ancient copper deposits hidden deep beneath the dirt, ultimately dictate the rise, hybridization, and survival of even our modern nations? Think about the lasting power of the earth beneath our feet. Thanks for digging into the past with me.